Hey guys, we just turned up here at the Active Health Clinic at Hong Kong University. We're going to meet Glenn Joe, who's an exercise physiologist here. And we're going to be talking about Dexa Scan Technology, trying to find out what body composition is, what makes up fat mass, what makes up muscle mass, how they're different, what kind of testing types there are to actually test body composition, how they vary, and getting some insight into Dexa Scan Technology. So see you in a second. Hey guys, I'm out here at the Active Health Clinic at Hong Kong University with Glenn Joe, who's a senior exercise physiologist here. And we're going to be talking about Dexa Scan Technology and body composition. So Glenn, thanks a lot for joining us. And can you explain for us what body composition is?
I guess body composition basically is the measure of your body. So, typically from a health or fitness point of view, it's looking at your bone density, which is obviously really important, your muscle mass and your fat mass.
Okay. And why is it important for us to understand what body composition is?
Yes, typically, height and weight is a typical measure that most people use. It's really easy to do, but essentially it's not telling the full picture, of course. You look at your total weight, and perhaps you're changing your nutrition, you're changing your exercise habits, and the weight doesn't change that much, but perhaps the muscle is going up, the fat is going down, is typically what we want to see. So obviously with height and weight, you're not essentially going to see that, whereas with a Dexa scan like this one, you certainly will see a lot more detail.
Sure. So that's the BMI that we're talking about, which is a very sort of old way of testing stuff for height and weight, in which case I'd be obese and not allowed to join any government services.
Yeah.
And obviously guys, we've got some great visual props here as well in terms of what body fat and muscle mass look like. This is
1 pound.
1 pound of fat. Right, and that
5 pounds.
5 pounds of fat. So if you lost 5 pounds of fat, that is a whole lot of cheese off the muffin tops. And so we talked about why body composition is important, what body composition is. So what are the different ways we can actually measure body composition?
I guess typically, like we said, height and weight's the simplest one to do because everyone knows kind of their height, and scales are very easy to come by in terms of your weight. Skin folds are typically one that a lot of facilities will do, and they're great if the person that's doing it is a very experienced technician, I guess. But even if in a very experienced technician, there's going to be some human error, of course. But those are typically the ones that most people will begin with. And then there's the BIA scales, the bioelectrical impedance analysis. So you either stand on a scale with your bare feet and you're holding on to some kind of handles, or with just your bare feet. And basically it's looking at how hydrated you are. So there's a signal that's getting passed through your body. And of course your muscle has more water than fat. So as it's going through, it's looking to the resistance to that flow. But as you can imagine, if you're more or less dehydrated, that's going to fluctuate throughout the day. So there are some obviously inaccuracies with that one there. And then the DEXA is the next one, and then essentially it's a very low density X-ray, so the amount of radiation is, say for example, you get a dental X-ray, 30 times less than a dental X-ray. If you fly long haul, 20 times less than the amount of radiation you get when you fly. And then it's looking at the different density of the tissue, so basically your bone, your fat and your muscle, because it has those different densities. So the X-ray is going to show that to see which, I guess, parts of the body are more or less.
So that's great. So we're talking about skin folds. Obviously there's a lot of human error, or potential for human error on skin folds, and also different types of body fat. So if we've got the adipose tissue versus visceral body fat, which is going to come out from around the internal organs and mobilize, it can be a little bit tricky. We've got bioimpedance, and there's certain types of technology with the bioimpedance, and that's, I guess, very relevant in a place like Hong Kong. A lot of the big commercial chains have got these bioimpedance machines. I guess one of the downsides there is there's a bit of fluctuation based on hydration levels. Do you see a lot of discrepancy amongst different brands of machines from a low-level scale, for example, you buy at a supermarket or a Japan home versus?
Yeah, absolutely. Even within the same brand, there can be quite a big difference. So certainly, basically the machine is again looking for that resistance to the flow, and then it's got an algorithm within that little computer. So it's going to tell you, you've set your height, you set your weight, and then it's doing the impedance analysis, and then it's got an algorithm to spit out that percentage. So all the different machines are going to have different algorithms. All the different machines, obviously, some are just using handles, some are just using your feet, some are using your hands and your feet. So there's always going to be lots and lots of differences in between those ones as well.
Right. Okay, great. So Dexa Scan, from your point of view, is the gold standard. Can you tell us a little bit more about the actual process? So what's involved in getting a Dexa scan
Sure.
done?
So basically, on this table here, you're basically just going to lie down on this table for around about 6 to 7 minutes, and you stay as still as you can. So again, there is a detector in the bottom, and then there's a beam that goes to the top. So the table is obviously going to just move around very slowly, and then it's going to scan your whole body, and then it's going to obviously look at the different densities in different tissues. So essentially, you're just lying down for 6 minutes, and you don't have to do anything. You basically just make sure that you have no zips or buttons or anything like that. So shorts and a t-shirt and stuff like that. There's no real requirements for when you eat or when you shouldn't eat. So any time during the day, and essentially coming in and doing it for 6 minutes, and then a quick analysis and discussion about it, you're in and out in 30 minutes.
And will the cellular hydration from a bioimpedance have the same effect? So using that technology of the bioimpedance have the same effect in a Dexa scan? Is that relevant with Dexa scan?
Probably less. Certainly there's going to be some minor fluctuations, in terms of the accuracy, but in terms of the overall difference, it's probably pretty insignificant. So certainly on the scales, the BIA scales, if you're again more or less dehydrated, it's going to fluctuate quite a lot, whereas this one should be really pretty accurate.
That's because the X-rays are actually hitting different types of mass as opposed to just measuring the hydration levels and using the algorithm.
Exactly, yeah.
Great. So if someone's coming in for the first time and getting a Dexa scan done, do you see a difference in the result that they see versus what they might have thought they were at? So their body fat percentage, Dexa's telling them one thing, and they have come from a bioimpedance or a skin fold or some other way of measuring that.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, most people's first reaction when they see the result is, wow, that's a lot more than I thought. And typically it's mainly because I guess in the mass media, people talk about their body fat percentage and their single digits, they're 5%, they're 8%, females maybe 10, 15%, and they may well be if they've perhaps done skin folds or the BIA analysis or whatever they have, but for the Dexa scan, certainly, for example, the guys that we normally see usually between 20 and 30%. So a guy that is kind of below 20, that's already pretty decent. Don't often see single digits for guys, and then for girls, typically 30 to 40% is what we normally see. And then again, for females, 25 to 30, that's actually pretty lean already.
Yeah.
Don't often see below 20% for the Dexa. So I guess it's just, in terms of that figure that people have in their head, they're used to seeing those numbers because of skin folds and because of the BIA analysis. And Dexa, it's not a new analysis machine, but it's certainly being used more for body composition when it was used. It was designed for bone density, basically.
Right. I think that's a really important point to make because a lot of people, and especially when we've all got access to the internet, it's very easy to get these ad hoc bits of information and influence. And so, for women, if they're following someone, an influencer or an educator, and they're being told this is what 18% body fat looks like, as you said, for a woman to be sub 20, she's in shape, really, quite lean. For a woman to be under 15 is, unless they're a competitive sort of physique or a bikini athlete, that's their thing, is almost
absolutely, yeah. And there's been a couple of times for females, especially we've seen them below 20, and I would like to say probably a little bit unhealthy to be that low as well.
Right.
So certainly there are upper ranges. You don't want to have too much body fat, but there's certainly lower ranges as well. You don't want to have not enough body fat as well. So it's certainly an important tissue to have, and obviously a certain healthy range is probably important.
Yeah, the lowest Dexa I've ever got was 6.1%, but I was close to death to get there. I was very gaunt. Yet you see stuff online all the time, of course, people saying I'm 8% body fat, so I know we look like nothing alike. So it's good just to know that we're talking simply about numbers here, and the number is almost irrelevant. And as Glenn's educated us on, what we want is whether we think that we're 15% or 25%, 55%, we want the best, most predictable technology to track what kind of interventions and changes we're going to make so that we can actually have something valid to compare it against. And so with that in mind, how frequently can we actually come and get a Dexa scan done?
You know, essentially in terms of the amount of radiation that you get from it, you could have one every day. It's no problem. But you know, typically we say 8 to 12 weeks. Certainly, you can come in shorter than that if you wanted to, 4 weeks or 6 weeks. The change perhaps will not be as significant, but you know, 8 to 12 weeks is a more perhaps manageable time in terms of seeing a change. And then also goal setting as well. Perhaps, you know, if you say 6 months, then maybe it's perhaps a little bit longer in terms of setting those goals. But it's really up to the individual. But certainly we say maybe around 8 to 12 weeks.
Are you often surprised by people whose weight on the scale, their molecular weight might not have shifted too much, but they actually walk away quite surprised at what might have actually happened? You know, losing this and building this.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think a lot of them that come in the first time, or they do come back and they're like, well, the weight's not really shifting that much, and they perhaps get a little bit disheartened with the program, whether it's nutrition or exercise. But then when they do the scan and they can actually see, wow, okay, we've decreased fat mass by, let's say, 2.5 kilos, we've increased our muscle mass by maybe 2 kilos. So the net effect is on the scales is you're only changed half a kilo. But actually, when you look at the body fat percentage, because of those changes in the fat mass and the muscle mass, the percentage has actually changed quite a lot, even though the total weight hasn't changed that much.
That's a really, really important point, because I think one of the big sort of misunderstandings is that somehow we can sort of turn this into this or turn this into this, and they're diametrically opposed. It's not completely untrue in that this can be the fuel to build this, but essentially we've got very, very different, you know, structures within the body, and the body fat is essentially the fuel. So if we've lost the fuel, we've been absorbing extra calories and we've actually been expending, and we've built more metabolically active tissue with the muscle mass, it means that our caloric requirements are now a little bit higher, which will hopefully avoid us building too much of this in the future again. So we can come in sort of as our little checkpoints along the way. How do we get in touch with you and to get a Dexa scan booked in?
Yeah, essentially directly emailing me if you like, but certainly just go online, Google Active Health Clinic, Hong Kong perhaps, or Body Composition Hong Kong, and you'll probably come up with a Google search, and then just make contact, send us an email, and then we'll find a 30-minute window for you to do it, and then that's pretty much it. And then you know, once you've got your baseline, I think you know, working towards those goals. And then having, I guess, an objective measure of those results. You're probably going to feel different, but at least you can quantify those results as well, which are really interesting.
What's one of the most sort of profound changes you've seen in your time here in terms of like either body fat loss or a muscle gain?
Yeah, I think certainly everyone loves a big change,
Yeah.
but certainly the smaller changes are a lot more sustainable. But certainly, you know, we've seen people go from 35% down to 25%, but you know, everyone's so different. But I think body composition aside, certainly you know, seeing those changes are really interesting, but also just seeing, you know, the difference when they come in. You know,
Yeah.
certainly the body composition is one thing, but you know, psychologically, physically, you know,
Absolutely.
there's so many changes that you see in them, and then, you know, I only see them for 30 minutes, but you can absolutely tell a difference, you know, when they've made that difference. Lifestyle change, and then making just positive steps in their lifestyle, basically.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Glenn. Thank you for teaching us about Dexa Scan. And there you go, guys. You can come here to the Active Health Clinic at Hong Kong University. If you're watching this outside of Hong Kong, you'll find that in most capital cities around the world, they will have access to a Dexa Scan. It might be at a hospital or a sports performance clinic. So look up Dexa Scan, which either be spelled DEXA or DXA, depending on how they've abbreviated it. Dual energy X-ray absorption. Glenn, thank you so much, mate.
No problem.
All right, great. Thanks, guys.